The morning sun cast long shadows across the Fort Bragg training grounds as Staff Sergeant Maya Chen adjusted her tactical vest for what felt like the 100th time. At 5 feet 2 inches and barely 110 pounds soaking wet, she stood among her fellow soldiers like a sparrow among hawks. The 82nd Airborne Special Operations Training Program had drawn the military's elite from across the globe, and Maya knew she didn't look like she belonged. "Check out the diversity hire," whispered Sergeant First Class Brad Morrison, loud enough for half the squad to hear. His cronies chuckled as Maya pretended to focus on her equipment check. Morrison stood 6 feet tall with shoulders that could block out the sun, his face bearing the cocky expression of someone who'd never been truly challenged. Captain Rodriguez called the formation to attention. "Today we begin advanced combat maneuvers. You'll be evaluated on tactical awareness, weapon proficiency, and team coordination. Remember, this isn't basic training anymore. We're separating the wheat from the chaff." Maya's stomach tightened. She'd earned her place here through 2 tours in Afghanistan and an exemplary service record, but that didn't stop the doubters. Her parents had immigrated from Taiwan when she was 3, working double shifts at a restaurant so she could have opportunities they'd never dreamed of. The military had given her purpose, structure, and a chance to prove that heart mattered more than height. The first exercise involved clearing a mock building filled with pop-up targets and hostile actors. Teams of 4 would enter simultaneously from different points, requiring split-second coordination and flawless communication. Maya found herself paired with Morrison, Thompson, and Rodriguez, 3 men who'd made it clear they considered her a liability. "Stay back and try not to get in our way," Morrison muttered as they approached the structure. "This requires actual skill." The whistle blew. Maya's team breached through the north entrance while she took point through a side window, her M4 carbine feeling perfectly balanced in her hands. Years of training had taught her to move like water, fluid, silent, deadly when necessary. While her teammates stomped through the main corridors announcing their presence to every simulated enemy within a mile, Maya flowed through the building like a ghost. She cleared 3 rooms before her teammates had finished arguing about their approach to the first hallway. Each movement was calculated, efficient, precise. Her small stature allowed her to use cover that her larger colleagues couldn't even see. A hostile actor rounded the corner, weapon raised, but Maya had already anticipated his movement. 2 quick shots to center mass with her training rounds, and the instructor marked him down. "Where the hell is Chen?" Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "Handling business," Maya replied calmly, dropping another simulated enemy who'd been preparing to ambush Morrison's loud approach. By the time her teammates reached the building center, Maya had neutralized 6 threats and secured 2 mock hostages. The exercise time read 4 minutes and 37 seconds, well below the target time, and entirely due to her silent efficiency while her team had stumbled through like tourists. Morrison's face flushed red as the instructors tallied scores. "Lucky shots," he grumbled. The afternoon brought marksmanship trials. Soldiers took turns at various distances with different weapons systems, from standard rifles to specialized sniper platforms. Maya had always been a natural shooter, her small frame meant less mass to control recoil, and her patience allowed her to wait for the perfect shot while others rushed. At 300 meters with iron sights, she placed every round within a 2-inch grouping. The instructor checked his scope twice before announcing her score. Morrison, shooting immediately after her, sprayed his rounds across a 6-inch pattern and blamed the wind. "Beginner's luck," Thompson added. "Let's see how she handles stress shooting." The stress course combined physical exertion with precision shooting. Soldiers had to complete an obstacle course, then immediately engage targets at various ranges while their hearts hammered and their hands shook from exhaustion. Maya watched her colleagues struggle as fatigue degraded their accuracy. When her turn came, she approached the obstacles differently than the others. While they powered through with brute force, she used technique and efficiency. Her gymnastics background from childhood helped her flow over barriers and through crawl spaces with minimal energy expenditure. She completed the physical portion faster than anyone else and, with her breathing still controlled. The shooting portion required engaging 12 targets at ranges from 50 to 400 meters within 90 seconds. Maya's first shot dropped a 400-meter target that 3 previous shooters had missed entirely. Her rhythm was hypnotic: sight picture, breath control, squeeze, transition. Each shot flowed into the next with mechanical precision. 11 hits out of 12 shots. The only miss came when a strong gust of wind caught her final round just enough to move it outside the scoring ring by millimeters. "Damn," breathed Sergeant Collins, who'd been watching from the side. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Practice, Maya said simply, though she didn't mention the countless hours she'd spent at ranges using her own ammunition money, or the extra shifts she'd worked to afford better equipment, or the weekends spent studying ballistics tables while her peers partied. As the day wore on, each exercise revealed the same pattern. While her teammates relied on size, strength, and aggression, Maya succeeded through skill, preparation, and intelligence. She outperformed them in tactical planning, equipment maintenance, and situational awareness. Yet the mockery continued. She's probably cheating somehow, Morrison told anyone who'd listen during their meal break. No way someone that small can compete with real soldiers. Maya ate her MRE in silence, long accustomed to being underestimated. Her father had faced similar prejudice when he'd first opened his restaurant, customers assuming he couldn't cook American food properly, suppliers trying to shortchange him, competitors spreading rumors about his business. He'd taught her that actions spoke louder than words, and that excellence was its own reward. The evening's final exercise would test night operations capabilities. Soldiers had to navigate a complex course using night vision equipment, then engage threats in low-light conditions. Many struggled with the disorienting effect of green-tinted darkness and the limited peripheral vision of their equipment. Maya had requested extra night training during her previous assignments, knowing that smaller soldiers often had advantages in darkness, quieter movement, better natural night vision adaptation, and the ability to use shadows effectively. She moved through the course like she'd been born in darkness, her footsteps silent on loose gravel that betrayed every other soldier's position. The night shooting portion challenged soldiers to engage targets they could barely see, relying on muzzle flash identification and sound discipline. Maya's shots rang out with mechanical regularity, each one finding its mark while her colleagues fired at shadows and imagination. When the scores were tallied, Maya had achieved the highest marks in every category except upper body strength tests. Her overall performance ranked in the top 5% of soldiers who'd ever attempted the course. Yet as her unit gathered for debrief, the whispered comments continued. Must be nice having lower standards, someone muttered. Probably gets extra help from instructors. I heard they're required to pass a certain number of minorities. Maya's hands clenched into fists, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd heard these accusations before, and they stung because they diminished everything she'd worked for. Every perfect shot became luck. Every tactical success became lowered standards. Every achievement became evidence of unfairness rather than excellence. Captain Rodriguez dismissed the formation, but Maya noticed Colonel Blackwood watching from the observation tower. The base commander rarely observed routine training exercises, and his presence made the day's performance even more significant. She'd heard stories about Blackwood, a legendary operator who'd earned his reputation in the most dangerous corners of the world, a man who could identify exceptional talent from a single observation. As soldiers dispersed toward their barracks, Maya remained on the range, running through dry-fire exercises with her weapon. The mockery hurt, but it also motivated her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, and new chances for her critics to find excuses for her success. She thought about her father's words on the day she'd enlisted: success is not given, Maya. It is taken by those brave enough to seize it, despite what others say. She'd seized her success today, but she knew the real test was yet to come. Special operations demanded not just skill, but the ability to perform under pressure that would break most people. The training facility emptied as evening settled over Fort Bragg, but Maya continued her practice. In the growing darkness, her movements became even more precise, more fluid. She was preparing for something her teammates couldn't see coming, the moment when mockery would turn to respect, when whispers would become acknowledgement. Colonel Blackwood descended from the observation tower, his footsteps echoing across the empty range. Maya snapped to attention, unsure why the commanding officer was approaching her directly. At ease, Sergeant, he said, his voice carrying decades of command authority. Impressive performance today. Thank you, sir, Maya replied, maintaining military bearing despite her racing heart. Blackwood studied her for a long moment, his experienced eyes taking in details that others missed. Tell me, Sergeant Chen, what do you know about advanced tactical operations? I know they require excellence, sir. Excellence in every aspect of performance. Indeed they do. The colonel's slight smile suggested he saw potential that others overlooked. Continue your preparation, Sergeant. I suspect you'll need every bit of skill you've developed. As he walked away, Maya felt a shift in the air. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the real testing would begin, and she would show everyone exactly what a black viper strike looked like when delivered by someone they'd never seen coming. The night settled around her as she continued her practice, each movement building toward a moment of reckoning that would change everything. In the distance, she could hear her teammates laughing and joking, unaware that their assumptions were about to be shattered by the small woman they dismissed as inadequate. Maya Chen was ready to prove that in the world of elite military operations, heart and skill mattered far more than size and swagger. The question was whether her critics were ready to learn that lesson. The alarm pierced the pre-dawn darkness at 0430 hours, jolting the special operations candidates from their brief rest. Maya rolled from her bunk with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from countless deployments guiding her movements. Around her, other soldiers groaned and stumbled in the darkness, but she was already lacing her boots while they searched for their gear. "Jesus, Chen, do you ever sleep?" muttered Corporal Jenkins, fumbling with his equipment in the dim light. Maya didn't respond. Sleep was a luxury she'd learned to manage carefully. While her teammates had spent the previous evening complaining about training difficulty and questioning her qualifications, she'd studied tactical manuals and reviewed tomorrow's exercise parameters. Knowledge was her equalizer in a world that judged her by appearance rather than ability. The morning briefing revealed their most challenging exercise yet, a simulated hostage rescue operation in an abandoned industrial complex. The scenario involved armed terrorists holding civilian captives in a multi-story building with limited access points and unknown defensive positions. Teams would be evaluated on planning, execution, adaptability, and mission success. Colonel Blackwood himself would oversee the exercise, his presence adding weight to an already intense evaluation. Maya noticed him watching her during the briefing, his expression unreadable but his attention unmistakable. She wondered what he saw when he looked at her potential or liability, asset or affirmative action checkbox. "This is where the pretenders get exposed," Morrison whispered to his circle of supporters. "Real operations require real operators, not diversity experiments." Maya's jaw tightened, but she channeled her anger into focus. She'd faced this prejudice throughout her military career, and she'd learned that the best response was flawless performance. Let them doubt her capabilities, she'd prove them wrong when it mattered most. The team selection process paired candidates randomly, and Maya found herself assigned with Sergeants Wilson, Martinez, and Davis. Wilson was a solid soldier with infantry experience, Martinez brought demolitions expertise, and Davis had communications specialization. None of them had actively mocked her, but she could see the doubt in their eyes. "Look, Chen," Wilson said during their planning phase, "no offense, but this mission requires serious firepower. Maybe you should handle communications while we take point." "I appreciate the concern," Maya replied evenly, "but I suggest we assign roles based on capability rather than assumptions. I've done hostage rescue before." She didn't mention that her previous rescue mission in Afghanistan had earned her a Bronze Star, or that she'd been the team member who'd identified the entry point that allowed them to save 6 American contractors. Humility was a virtue, but sometimes it worked against you. Their planning session revealed different philosophies. Wilson favored direct assault with overwhelming force. Martinez wanted to blast through walls and create multiple entry points. Davis suggested lengthy reconnaissance to identify all threats before moving. Maya studied the building schematics and proposed a different approach. The ground floor has too many sight lines for defenders. The roof access is probably trapped or monitored. But this loading dock on the east side connects to a service corridor that runs the building's length. We could infiltrate quietly, gather intelligence, then strike precisely where they don't expect us. "That's way too complicated," Wilson objected. "Simple plans work better under stress." "Simple plans work when you have overwhelming advantages," Maya countered. "When you don't, you need to be smarter than your enemy." Martinez sided with Wilson, preferring direct action to subtle infiltration. Davis remained neutral but clearly favored the majority opinion. Maya found herself outvoted, relegated to following a plan she knew had serious flaws. The exercise began at 1,100 hours under a scorching sun that turned their tactical gear into personal ovens. Maya watched other teams approach the complex with varying strategies. Morrison's team chose brute force, attempting to blast through the main entrance with breaching charges. The simulated defenders were ready for them, and paintball rounds marked 3 of his 4 team members as casualties within the first minute. Another team tried Wilson's preferred approach, spreading out to surround the building before moving in simultaneously. They triggered multiple defensive positions and found themselves pinned down in the parking lot, unable to advance or retreat effectively. Maya's team moved toward their assigned entry point on the building's west side, where large windows offered multiple access options. Wilson had chosen this approach because it looked straightforward: clear the ground floor room by room, then advance upstairs to locate the hostages.
Remember, Chen stays back until we secure each room, Wilson radioed as they approached their breach point.
Maya wanted to argue but held her tongue. She'd prove her worth when the opportunity presented itself, and she suspected that opportunity would come sooner than her teammates expected.
The first room contained 2 simulated terrorists positioned behind overturned desks.
Wilson and Martinez breached simultaneously, their movements coordinated but predictably direct. The defenders had been expecting exactly this approach and managed to tag Martinez with paintball rounds before Davis eliminated them.
"Martinez is down," the exercise controller announced. "Continue with remaining team members."
1/3 of their team was gone within 2 minutes, but Wilson pressed forward with his original plan. Maya followed, her weapon ready, her senses alert for dangers her teammates might miss. She'd learned to trust her instincts, especially when working with soldiers who underestimated both her and their enemies.
The second room appeared empty until Maya noticed scuff marks on the floor leading to a supply closet.
While Wilson and Davis cleared the obvious hiding spots, she positioned herself to cover the closet door. When a terrorist emerged to ambush her distracted teammates, Maya's shots tagged him before he could fire.
"Nice catch," Davis acknowledged grudgingly. They advanced to the main corridor, where the building's layout forced them to choose between 3 possible routes to the upper floors. Wilson selected the central staircase because it offered the most direct path to their objective.
Maya studied the options and realized why her original infiltration plan would have been superior. "The service corridor I mentioned earlier connects to all 3 stairwells," she pointed out. "We could have reconnaissance and options instead of committing to one approach." "Too late for that now," Wilson replied curtly. The central staircase proved to be a killing funnel exactly as Maya had feared. Defenders at the top had clear fields of fire down the entire stairway, and the team's only cover was a thin metal railing that wouldn't stop actual bullets. Wilson charged up the stairs with Davis behind him, their assault rifle fire echoing through the concrete space. Paintball rounds rained down on them from above. Davis took a hit to his chest and was ruled out of the exercise. Wilson managed to reach the first landing but found himself pinned behind inadequate cover with 2 terrorist positions covering his location.
"Chen, get up here and help," Wilson shouted.
Maya assessed the tactical situation and realized that following Wilson's path would simply add her name to the casualty list.
Instead, she remembered the building schematics and identified an alternative approach.
A maintenance ladder in the rear corridor provided access to the second floor without exposing her to the prepared defensive positions. "Cover me for 30 seconds, she radioed, then disappeared back into the corridor system.
"Where the hell is she going?" Wilson demanded, but Maya was already moving. The maintenance area was exactly where the blueprints had indicated, though accessing it required squeezing through a gap that her larger teammates couldn't have managed. Her small size finally became an advantage rather than a perceived weakness. She climbed quickly and quietly, emerging on the second floor behind the terrorist positions that had Wilson pinned down. The simulated enemies had positioned themselves perfectly to cover the staircase but hadn't considered alternate approaches. Maya moved through empty offices with silent precision, using furniture and shadows for concealment. Her childhood gymnastics training helped her navigate obstacles without creating noise that would alert the defenders.
She identified 3 terrorist positions through careful observation, noting their weapons, fields of fire, and communication patterns. 2 were focused entirely on Wilson's trapped position, while the third monitored the other staircases for additional threats. None of them were watching their rear approaches.
Maya's plan required split-second timing.
She positioned herself with clear shots at all 3 positions, then keyed her radio. "Wilson, prepare to advance on my signal.
3, 2, 1, go."
As Wilson emerged from cover and drew the terrorists' attention, Maya engaged all 3 positions in rapid succession.
Her shots were precise and efficient. Each simulated enemy was eliminated before they could react to the threat behind them.
Wilson advanced up the staircase without taking fire, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise.
"How did you?" he began.
"Alternative approaches," Maya replied simply.
They reunited on the second floor and advanced toward the hostage location on the third floor.
Intelligence indicated the captives were being held in a large conference room with multiple defensive positions and potential booby traps. This was where most teams would fail, as direct assault guaranteed civilian casualties. Maya studied the floor plan and identified a ventilation system that connected to the conference room. While Wilson prepared for another frontal assault, she proposed a different strategy. The ventilation shaft lets me get eyes on the hostage situation before we commit to action. If I can identify exact enemy positions and civilian locations, we can plan precise entry that minimizes risk. Wilson was learning to trust her tactical insights.
Do it, but be careful. We can't afford to lose our last advantage.
The ventilation shaft was cramped and dark, designed for airflow rather than human passage.
Maya's small frame allowed her to navigate the metal ducting, though the noise of her movement seemed impossibly loud in the confined space.
She reached a grate overlooking the conference room and carefully observed the situation below.
5 terrorists held 8 civilians in the center of the room.
The hostages were seated in chairs with their hands zip-tied, positioned as human shields between the defenders and potential entry points. 2 terrorists covered the main door, 1 watched the windows, 1 monitored a secondary entrance, and the 5th appeared to be the leader, positioned behind the hostages with what looked like a detonator.
Maya memorized every detail: weapon positions, sightlines, civilian locations, potential cover.
She identified a sequence that could neutralize all threats while protecting the hostages, but it required perfect execution and precise timing.
She radioed her observations to Wilson, including detailed positions and recommended tactics.
For the first time since the exercise began, she could hear respect in his voice as he acknowledged her intelligence.
Outstanding reconnaissance, Chen. What's your recommendation for entry?
Maya outlined a plan that used distraction, misdirection, and simultaneous strikes from multiple angles.
Wilson would create a disturbance at the main entrance to draw attention while Maya dropped from the ventilation system behind the leader's position.
The timing had to be perfect, but it was their best chance for mission success.
That's incredibly risky, Wilson pointed out.
All the good options are risky, Maya replied.
The question is whether we execute risk intelligently or stumble into it blindly.
Wilson agreed to her plan. Maya positioned herself above the leader's location while Wilson prepared his distraction.
The next 60 seconds would determine whether her tactical judgment was superior to her critics' assumptions.
As Wilson initiated contact at the main door, Maya silently removed the ventilation grate and prepared to drop into the room. This was the moment when everything she'd trained for would be tested under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she hung suspended in the ventilation shaft, muscles coiled for the drop that would either save 8 simulated hostages or doom the entire mission. Below her, the terrorist leader shifted nervously, his finger hovering near what appeared to be a detonation device. Wilson's voice crackled through the main door, demanding the terrorists surrender while creating the distraction Maya needed. The drop was 12 feet to the floor, and Maya had calculated her landing zone to within inches. She would have perhaps 2 seconds of surprise before the terrorists realized they'd been flanked. 2 seconds to neutralize the primary threat and shift the tactical balance decisively. She released her grip and fell silently through the opening. Maya's landing was cat-quiet, her knees absorbing the impact as she rolled behind an overturned conference table. The terrorist leader was focused on Wilson's demands at the main entrance, his back to Maya's position. She could see his finger tensing on the detonator, and she knew Wilson's distraction had reached its limit. Her first shot took the leader's center mass before he could trigger any device.
As he collapsed, Maya was already pivoting toward the terrorist covering the windows.
Her second and third shots dropped him before the others realized their rear security had been compromised. The remaining terrorists spun toward Maya's position, but Wilson chose that moment to breach the main door.
Caught between 2 firing positions, the simulated enemies found themselves in an impossible tactical situation. Maya's shots eliminated the terrorist covering the secondary entrance while Wilson engaged the remaining defenders. The entire engagement lasted 18 seconds. When the exercise controllers called clear, all 5 terrorists had been neutralized and 0 hostages showed paint marks indicating casualties. Jesus Christ, Wilson breathed, staring at Maya with newfound respect. Where did you learn to move like that? Maya checked her gear and ensured her weapon was safe before responding.
Practice. Lots of practice. What she didn't tell Wilson was that her approach had been based on a real hostage rescue she'd participated in during her second deployment. That mission had involved actual lives, real bullets, and consequences that extended far beyond exercise evaluations. The techniques she'd used today had been perfected under conditions where failure meant death rather than embarrassment. The exercise controllers tallied their performance as other teams completed their attempts. Maya's team had achieved complete mission success in the fastest time while sustaining the fewest casualties. Several other teams had failed entirely, with high civilian casualty rates or complete tactical breakdown under pressure. Morrison's team had been eliminated during their initial breach attempt. Thompson's group had managed to reach the hostage location but lost all team members during their assault. Only 2 teams besides Maya's had achieved any measure of success, and neither had matched their performance metrics. As the teams gathered for after-action review, Maya noticed the quality of attention she was receiving had changed. Instead of dismissive glances and whispered mockery, her fellow soldiers studied her with curiosity and grudging respect. Word of her ventilation shaft infiltration and precision shooting had spread quickly through the tight-knit special operations community. Colonel Blackwood conducted the debrief personally, reviewing each team's performance with clinical precision. When he reached Maya's team, his analysis was particularly thorough. Sergeant Wilson, your initial planning showed good intentions but poor tactical understanding. Direct assault against prepared positions typically results in high casualties and mission failure. Wilson accepted the criticism professionally. Yes, sir. I should have listened to alternative approaches. Sergeant Chen, Blackwood continued, your reconnaissance and tactical adaptation demonstrated advanced operational thinking. The ventilation infiltration showed creativity under pressure. However, the risk level was significant. Explain your decision-making process. Maya had prepared for this question. Sir, all available options carried substantial risk. The choice was between calculated risk with high success probability versus certain failure through conventional approaches. The mission parameters prioritized hostage safety and objective completion over operator security. Blackwood nodded approvingly. Correct analysis. In special operations, we often face situations where conventional tactics are inadequate. Success requires adaptive thinking and precise execution under extreme pressure. The colonel's attention seemed to linger on Maya longer than necessary, and she wondered what significance her performance held beyond the immediate exercise evaluation. Blackwood had a reputation for identifying exceptional talent, and she sensed that today's demonstration had caught his attention in ways that extended beyond routine training assessment. The afternoon session introduced urban warfare scenarios with multiple hostile forces and civilian populations. Teams would navigate through a mock city environment while engaging various threat types and protecting non-combatant actors. The exercise tested not only combat skills but judgment, discrimination, and the ability to operate effectively in complex environments. Maya found herself reassigned to a different team, this time paired with experienced operators who approached her with professional respect rather than dismissive prejudice. Sergeant First Class Anderson was a veteran with 3 combat deployments, Corporal Washington brought urban warfare expertise from military police background, and Staff Sergeant Kim had specialized training in counterterrorism operations. I heard about your hostage rescue performance, Anderson said during their planning session. Wilson said you pulled off some serious operator-level tactics. We're glad to have you aboard. The acknowledgement felt strange after months of skepticism and mockery. Maya had grown accustomed to proving herself repeatedly, but she realized that exceptional performance in high-stakes situations could shift perceptions more quickly than gradual competence demonstration. Their mission involved clearing a 12-block area of simulated insurgents while protecting civilian actors and identifying high-value targets for capture rather than elimination. The scenario replicated conditions Maya had faced during urban operations in Afghanistan, where distinguishing between threats and innocence required split-second decisions with life-or-death consequences. Anderson assigned roles based on demonstrated capabilities rather than assumptions about physical limitations. Maya took point position due to her proven reconnaissance abilities, while the others provided supporting fire and civilian security. For the first time in the training program, she felt like an integral team member rather than a tolerated burden. The mock city was a masterpiece of military training infrastructure. Buildings contained multiple floors with interconnected passages, rooftops provided observation and firing positions, and civilian actors moved through the environment following scripted behaviors that mimicked real urban populations. Maya's team entered from the north side while other teams approached from different vectors. Their objective was to clear assigned sectors while maintaining constant communication and coordination with other units.
Friendly fire incidents would result in immediate exercise termination and severe evaluation penalties. The first block contained a mix of civilian actors and concealed threats. Maya's reconnaissance training allowed her to identify subtle behavioral indicators that distinguished between innocent bystanders and hostile forces preparing ambushes. She guided her team through the environment with confidence born from actual combat experience. 2 military-age males, second floor window, northeast building, she radioed quietly. Exhibiting surveillance behavior but no visible weapons. Recommend observation before engagement. Anderson confirmed her assessment through binoculars. Good eye, Chen. They're definitely watching our movement patterns. The team maneuvered to provide multiple observation angles while maintaining cover from potential sniper positions. Maya's small stature allowed her to use concealment that her teammates couldn't access, and her patience enabled her to wait for clear confirmation before recommending action. When the suspected observers produced weapons and prepared to engage another team approaching from the east, Maya's shots eliminated both threats before they could fire. Her accuracy and timing prevented what would have been a devastating ambush against unsuspecting operators. Outstanding threat identification and elimination, the exercise controller announced. Continue mission. Block by block, Maya's team advanced through their assigned sector with efficiency that impressed even experienced special operations instructors. Her tactical instincts consistently identified optimal routes, potential threats, and civilian protection requirements. The team's casualty rate remained 0 while their threat neutralization rate exceeded all other participating units. During one particularly challenging scenario, they encountered a group of civilian actors in a marketplace environment where several concealed terrorists were preparing a coordinated attack. Distinguishing between threats and innocence required careful observation and restraint, as engagement rules prohibited firing without positive target identification. Maya positioned herself with clear sightlines to the entire area while her teammates provided security from multiple angles. She observed the crowd dynamics and identified behavioral patterns that indicated hostile intent. 3 individuals were moving with purpose that differed from genuine shoppers, their positions forming a triangle that would allow crossfire against approaching military units. I have 3 potential hostiles using civilian concealment, Maya radioed. They're positioning for coordinated ambush but haven't produced weapons yet. Request permission to continue observation. Anderson trusted her judgment. Maintain overwatch. We'll establish containment positions. For 15 minutes, Maya tracked the suspected terrorists while they maneuvered through the civilian population. Her patience was rewarded when they finally revealed their weapons and prepared to execute their attack plan. Maya's shots eliminated all 3 threats within 4 seconds, preventing what would have been catastrophic casualties among both military and civilian actors. The exercise concluded with Maya's team achieving perfect mission completion, all assigned objectives accomplished, 0 friendly casualties, 0 civilian casualties, and 100% threat neutralization rate. Their performance statistics exceeded baseline standards for special operations units and established new benchmarks for the training program. Colonel Blackwood observed the final debrief with intense focus, particularly when discussing Maya's contributions to team success. She noticed him taking notes during the performance review, and she wondered what evaluations were being recorded beyond the immediate training assessments. Sergeant Chen, Blackwood addressed her directly. Your urban warfare performance demonstrated advanced tactical awareness and exceptional judgment under pressure. These capabilities are particularly valuable in complex operational environments. Maya maintained military bearing while internally acknowledging the significance of public recognition from the base commander. After months of skepticism and mockery, official acknowledgement of her abilities felt both validating and surreal. As teams dispersed for evening meals, Maya found herself surrounded by soldiers seeking to understand her tactical approaches. Questions came from genuine professional curiosity rather than challenging skepticism, and she shared her knowledge freely while remaining appropriately humble about her achievements. Morrison approached her during dinner, his expression uncertain and, perhaps slightly embarrassed. Chun, I wanted to say. I may have misjudged your capabilities. That hostage rescue thing was pretty impressive. Maya accepted his acknowledgement graciously. We all bring different strengths to the team. The goal is mission success, not individual recognition. Morrison nodded and walked away, leaving Maya to wonder if changing perceptions would translate into genuine acceptance or merely grudging recognition of her utility. Time would tell,
but she sensed that today's performance had shifted fundamental assumptions about her place within the special operations community.
Evening brought unexpected news.
Colonel Blackwood requested her presence in his office for individual consultation regarding advanced training opportunities. As Maya prepared for the meeting, she reflected on how dramatically circumstances had changed since the morning's dismissive comments and predictions of failure. The real test was yet to come, but Maya felt confident that she had begun to demonstrate the difference between appearance and capability, between assumption and reality. Colonel Blackwood's office occupied the top floor of the Special Operations Command Building, its windows offering a panoramic view of Fort Bragg's training facilities. Maya stood at attention before the colonel's desk, her uniform immaculate despite the day's intensive exercises. The office walls displayed decades of military service, photographs from operations across multiple theaters, commendations from foreign governments, and memorabilia that spoke to a career spent at the sharp edge of America's military capabilities.
At ease, Sergeant Chen, Blackwood said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Please, have a seat.
Maya settled into the chair, maintaining proper military bearing while studying the colonel's expression. His withered face revealed nothing, but his eyes held the calculating intensity of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected lives and national security. Your performance over the past 2 days has been exceptional, Blackwood began, consulting a thick folder that Maya assumed contained her evaluation records. The hostage rescue demonstrated tactical innovation under pressure. The urban warfare exercise showed sustained excellence across multiple complex scenarios. Your instructors report that your capabilities exceed baseline requirements for special operations personnel. Maya waited for the colonel's point, knowing that senior officers rarely summon junior enlisted personnel for simple congratulations.
Tell me about your background, Sergeant. Not the official records, I've read those.
Tell me about what drives you to pursue excellence when others are content with adequate performance.
The question caught Maya off guard.
She'd expected technical discussions about training progression or assignment preferences, not personal philosophy conversations with the base commander. Sir, I believe excellence is its own reward, she said carefully.
My parents sacrificed everything to give me opportunities in America.
Military service allows me to honor their sacrifice while serving something greater than personal advancement.
Blackwood nodded approvingly.
Family motivation is powerful, but insufficient for the missions I have in mind. Special operations requires individuals who can function independently under conditions that would break most people.
What happens when family motivation conflicts with operational necessities?
Maya recognized the colonel was probing her psychological foundations, testing whether her drive would sustain under extreme stress.
Sir, my commitment extends beyond family honor.
Military service represents personal values about protecting others who cannot protect themselves.
Those values don't conflict with operational requirements, they reinforce them. Interesting perspective. Blackwood opened another folder, this one containing photographs and documents that Maya couldn't clearly see. Are you familiar with the Black Viper program? Maya's pulse quickened.
Black Viper was legendary within special operations circles, a classified program that recruited exceptional personnel for highly sensitive missions. Rumors suggested the program operated outside normal military chains of command, conducting operations that officially didn't exist.
Only by reputation, sir. The details are above my clearance level. Indeed they are. Blackwood studied her intently.
The program requires individuals with unique combinations of technical skill, psychological resilience, and operational adaptability. Your recent performance suggests you might possess these qualities, but demonstration under controlled conditions differs significantly from real-world application. The colonel stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed across the training facilities.
Maya remained seated, uncertain whether the conversation was heading toward opportunity or disappointment.
Black Viper operators work in environments where conventional military support is unavailable, Blackwood continued.
They face situations requiring split-second decisions with strategic consequences.
Failure results in more than personal casualties, it can affect national security and international relationships. Maya felt the weight of the colonel's words.
This wasn't routine training progression, it was consideration for missions that would test every capability she'd spent years developing.
Tomorrow begins the final phase of your current training cycle, Blackwood said, returning to his desk.
However, I'm authorized to offer you an alternative path. Immediate transfer to advanced selection for specialized operations. The program will test capabilities you didn't know you possessed and push you beyond limits you thought were absolute. The offer was everything Maya had worked toward, yet she sensed underlying challenges that Blackwood wasn't fully describing. Elite programs demanded sacrifices that extended far beyond physical and mental endurance. What would this transfer involve, sir? Relocation to a classified facility. Intensive evaluation lasting several weeks. Training in capabilities that extend beyond conventional military operations. If you succeed, assignment to missions that will utilize every skill you've demonstrated and many you haven't yet developed. Blackwood paused, allowing the implications to settle. If you fail, return to regular assignments with no prejudice to your military career. However, the selection process has a significant attrition rate, and the psychological demands are substantial. Maya considered the offer while studying Blackwood's expression. The colonel was offering her everything she'd dreamed of, but she sensed he was also testing her decision-making process under pressure. Elite operators needed sound judgment more than desperate ambition. Sir, may I ask why you're offering this opportunity? My performance has been solid, but surely other candidates have demonstrated similar capabilities. An excellent question. Blackwood smiled slightly. Your performance metrics are indeed exceptional, but, more importantly, you've demonstrated the ability to succeed when others expect you to fail. Special operations frequently involves exceeding expectations under impossible circumstances. The colonel opened a third folder containing what appeared to be mission reports and classified documents. Additionally, certain operational environments require personnel who can operate without detection in locations where conventional operators would be immediately identified. Your physical characteristics and demonstrated skills create unique operational possibilities. Maya understood the implication. Her ethnicity and small stature could provide infiltration advantages in Asian operational theaters where larger, obviously Western operators would struggle to maintain cover. The decision must be made tonight, Blackwood continued. Transport leaves at 0600 hours for the selection facility. Once you depart, there's no returning until the evaluation process concludes. Maya felt the moment's significance settling around her like a mantle. This was the opportunity she'd spent her entire military career working toward, yet it required abandoning everything familiar for an unknown future filled with classified challenges. Sir, I accept the transfer. Blackwood nodded as if he'd expected her answer. Report to Building 117 at 0545 hours with full gear and personal effects. You'll receive additional briefing materials during transport. Sergeant Chen, this conversation is classified. You will not discuss this transfer with anyone prior to departure. Maya stood and saluted. Understood, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. Don't thank me yet, Sergeant. Thank me when you successfully complete the program. As Maya left the colonel's office, she felt the surreal quality of life-changing moments. Hours ago, her teammates had been questioning her qualifications for routine special operations training. Now she was preparing for selection into one of the military's most exclusive programs. She returned to her quarters and began packing personal effects while processing the day's dramatic shift. Her roommate, Corporal Davis, noticed her unusual packing activity. Going somewhere, Chen? Temporary reassignment, Maya replied truthfully while omitting crucial details. Could be several weeks. Davis accepted her explanation without pressing for specifics, accustomed to the military's frequent personnel movements and training assignments. Maya packed efficiently, including items that reflected her background and motivation, her parents' immigration documents, photographs from her previous deployments, and a small jade pendant her grandmother had given her before immigrating to America. These personal connections would remind her of why excellence mattered when the selection process tested her limits. Her weapons and tactical gear went into regulation containers, each piece of equipment carefully maintained and precisely organized. Maya had learned that attention to detail in small matters often determines success in critical situations. As evening settled over Fort Bragg, Maya reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her from her parents' restaurant kitchen to the threshold of elite military service. The mockery and skepticism she'd endured had strengthened her resolve rather than weakening her confidence. Morrison approached her as she completed her preparations. His expression was cautious, as if he wanted to apologize for his earlier behavior but didn't know how to begin. Chen, I heard you're transferring out. Wanted to say you're a solid operator. I misjudged you, and I'm sorry about that. Maya appreciated his honesty. No harm done, Morrison. We all have things to learn about working with different people. Morrison extended his hand. Good luck wherever you're going. I have a feeling you're going to do great things. Maya shook his hand, recognizing that changing perceptions was possible when performance spoke louder than prejudice. Morrison's acknowledgement felt like validation of her approach. Let actions define reputation rather than defending against assumptions.
She spent the remainder of the evening reviewing her tactical knowledge and mentally preparing for challenges she couldn't yet imagine. Black Viper selection would test capabilities she'd been developing throughout her military career, but in ways that would push her far beyond current comfort zones.
At 0400 hours, Maya's alarm pierced the pre-dawn darkness one final time at Fort Bragg.
She rose with the same efficiency that had characterized her entire training cycle, but now she was preparing for something far more significant than routine exercises. As she gathered her gear and prepared to report for transport, Maya thought about Colonel Blackwood's words regarding expectations and performance. Throughout her military career, she'd faced people who expected her to fail based on appearance rather than capability. Tomorrow would begin a selection process designed to break exceptional people, and she would need every ounce of skill and determination she'd developed. Maya Chen was ready to discover what lay beyond the limits others had placed on her potential. The Black Viper program would either confirm her exceptional capabilities or reveal that her ambitions exceeded her actual abilities. Either way, she would face the challenge with the same quiet confidence that had carried her through every previous test. The transport awaited, and, with it, the next chapter of a journey that had begun with mockery and doubt but was now leading toward possibilities she'd only dared to imagine. The Black Viper selection facility existed in a classified location that Maya's transport reached after 6 hours of travel through increasingly remote terrain. As the unmarked helicopter descended toward a complex hidden among mountain peaks, she caught glimpses of training areas that dwarfed anything she'd experienced at Fort Bragg. This was where America's most elite operators were forged, and where most candidates discovered the difference between exceptional and extraordinary.
Maya was one of 12 candidates who emerged from various transports that morning.
The group included seasoned special operations veterans, combat-tested soldiers from multiple branches, and individuals whose backgrounds remained deliberately mysterious. All shared the same determined expression of people accustomed to exceeding normal human limitations.
The selection process began immediately upon arrival.
No orientation, no welcome ceremony, no explanation of expectations. Candidates were assigned numbered positions and directed to equipment lockers containing gear they'd never seen before. Maya found herself studying advanced tactical systems that represented the cutting edge of military technology. "You have 30 minutes to familiarize yourselves with provided equipment," announced a voice over the facility's intercom system. "First exercise begins at 0800 hours.
Failure to be properly equipped will result in immediate elimination from the program." Maya recognized the psychological pressure inherent in the approach.
Black Viper selection wasn't just testing technical skills, it was evaluating how candidates responded to stress, ambiguity, and impossible time constraints. She focused on equipment essentials while mentally cataloging advanced features she could explore later. The first exercise transported candidates to a mountainous training area where they would navigate 50 miles of harsh terrain while carrying 80-pound packs and completing tactical challenges along the route. The course was designed to eliminate physically and mentally unprepared candidates before investing training resources in advanced evaluation phases. Maya had prepared for grueling physical demands, but the reality exceeded her expectations. The pack weight represented 75% of her body weight, forcing her to adopt hiking techniques that maximized efficiency while minimizing energy expenditure. Her small stature became both advantage and liability: easier concealment but greater proportional load burden. The route included river crossings, cliff climbing, navigation challenges, and simulated combat scenarios that tested decision-making under extreme fatigue. Maya found herself falling behind the larger candidates during uphill sections where raw physical power determined pace, but she regained position during technical climbing phases that favored agility over strength. Candidate 8, a massive army ranger, set the early pace with long strides that covered ground quickly. Maya studied his technique and realized that matching his speed would exhaust her reserves before reaching halfway. Instead, she adopted a steady rhythm that she could sustain regardless of terrain challenges. By hour 6, Candidate 8's aggressive pace had taken its toll. Maya watched him struggle during a rope climbing challenge that required upper body endurance rather than burst power. She passed him during this section, offering a word of encouragement that he accepted with grudging respect. "How are you still moving so efficiently?" he asked during a brief rest stop.
"Different approach," Maya replied. "Sustainability over speed."
The navigation challenges tested map reading, compass use, and terrain association under conditions designed to induce confusion and error.
Maya's deployment experience in Afghanistan's mountain regions provided advantages that classroom-trained candidates lacked.
She had learned to read terrain features like a language, interpreting subtle indicators that revealed direction and distance.
Candidate 3 struggled with navigation despite excellent physical performance.
Maya noticed him becoming increasingly disoriented and making errors that would lead him miles off course. Military ethics demanded that she assist a fellow service member in distress. "Your bearing is 15 degrees off," she said quietly.
"Adjust to 270 to stay en route."
Candidate 3 accepted her guidance gratefully.
"I owe you one. This navigation stuff is harder than I expected."
"We all have different strengths," Maya replied. "Help me during the heavy lifting sections." The partnership proved mutually beneficial. Maya's navigation skills kept them on course while Candidate 3's physical strength assisted her during obstacle challenges that required raw power. Together, they maintained position among the leading candidates despite their individual limitations.
Hour 12 brought the first major attrition. 3 candidates had fallen so far behind schedule that exercise controllers eliminated them from the program.
Maya felt sympathy for their disappointment, but she also recognized the program's necessity for maintaining standards that reflected real operational demands. The most challenging portion involved crossing a river where spring snowmelt had created dangerous currents and near-freezing water temperatures.
Candidates had to maintain equipment security while navigating conditions that could easily result in hypothermia or equipment loss.
Maya studied the current patterns and identified crossing points that minimized exposure to dangerous water. Her small size allowed her to use rock formations that larger candidates couldn't access, and her gymnastics background helped her maintain balance on slippery surfaces. Candidate 8 struggled with the crossing, his heavy pack and exhausted condition making him vulnerable to the current's power. Maya had already completed her crossing but noticed his difficulty. Military values demanded she offer assistance despite the competitive nature of selection. She positioned herself downstream with a rope, ready to assist if he lost footing. When the current caught him, her quick response prevented what could have been a dangerous situation. Together, they completed the crossing safely, though both were severely chilled and exhausted.
"Thanks, Chen," he said, recognizing her name from her pack identifier. "You didn't have to do that."
"Yes, I did," Maya replied simply.
The final hours tested psychological endurance as much as physical capability.
Sleep deprivation, caloric deficit, and accumulated stress challenged candidates' decision-making abilities and emotional control. Maya had experienced similar conditions during combat deployments, but never for such extended periods without external support. Hallucinations began affecting several candidates as exhaustion reached critical levels.
Maya found herself questioning whether distant shapes were real or imagined, whether sounds indicated threats or fatigue-induced paranoia. She relied on systematic verification of sensory input, cross-checking observations against logical expectations.
The finish line appeared after 47 hours of continuous movement. Maya crossed with 4 other candidates who had completed the course within time limits. 7 candidates had been eliminated due to medical issues, navigation failures, or inability to maintain required pace. Colonel Blackwood waited at the finish area, observing successful candidates with analytical intensity. His presence indicated the significance of completion, as base commanders rarely monitored selection exercises personally.
"Congratulations on completing Phase 1, Blackwood announced. You have demonstrated basic capability for advanced evaluation. Phase 2 begins tomorrow after medical clearance and equipment preparation." Maya felt relief rather than celebration.
Completing the physical challenge qualified her for continued evaluation, but she suspected the most difficult tests lay ahead. Black Viper selection would evaluate capabilities far beyond endurance and navigation. Medical evaluation revealed that Maya had completed the course in excellent physical condition despite its demanding requirements. Her preparation had been sufficient, and her tactical approach had conserved energy while maintaining performance standards.
"Remarkable efficiency," the medical officer noted.
"Your biometric data shows minimal stress indicators despite the challenging conditions.
How did you maintain such consistent performance?" Maya considered her response carefully. Preparation and pacing. I trained for sustainability rather than peak performance. That evening, successful candidates gathered for briefing regarding Phase 2 requirements.
The evaluation would test technical skills, psychological resilience, and operational judgment under conditions that simulated real Black Viper missions.
Phase 2 will challenge every capability you've developed throughout your military careers, the briefing officer explained.
You will face scenarios designed to reveal strengths and weaknesses that standard training cannot evaluate.
Some of you will discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed. Others will learn that their limitations are more significant than anticipated. Maya studied her fellow candidates, recognizing that they represented the military's finest personnel.
Competing against such talent would require her absolute best performance, but she felt confident in abilities that had carried her through increasingly difficult challenges.
Candidate 3 approached her during the evening meal. I wanted to thank you again for the navigation help. I wouldn't have made it without your assistance.
We're supposed to work together, Maya replied. Individual achievement means nothing if the team fails.
I hear Phase 2 involves teamwork scenarios, Candidate 3 said. I'd be honored to work with you.
Maya appreciated the sentiment, but she suspected that Phase 2 would test more than technical skills and teamwork abilities. Black Viper operations required individuals who could function independently under conditions where conventional support was unavailable, and failure carried strategic consequences. As she prepared for the next day's challenges, Maya reflected on her journey from the mock soldier in basic training to a Black Viper selection candidate. Excellence had opened doors she'd never imagined, but the most significant tests remained ahead. Tomorrow would determine whether her capabilities matched her ambitions, whether years of preparation had been sufficient, and whether she possessed the psychological resilience necessary for missions that officially didn't exist.
Maya Chen was ready to discover the absolute limits of her potential. Colonel Blackwood's words echoed in her mind. Special operations frequently involves exceeding expectations under impossible circumstances.
Tomorrow, she would learn whether her impossible circumstances would yield extraordinary performance or reveal the boundaries of her actual capabilities. The mountains surrounding the Black Viper facility stood like silent sentinels, witnesses to years of selection processes that had identified America's most elite operators. Maya fell asleep wondering what those peaks had witnessed, and what they would witness when her own moment of truth arrived with the dawn.